I'm here with Ms. Zimmerman. And today we're going to be talking about something I'm not very uh, knowledgeable about with horror, but horror animes. And then after that, we're going to talk about some horror games. So, Ms. Zimmerman, can you tell me about some of your favorite or just horror animes in general?
Oh yeah. So there's a lot to unpack here, as we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. I have a little bit of a ranking system that I go through when I watch different horror anime and when I evaluate it, because I decide if I want to watch it again, because there's oftentimes a lot of different things that you can pick up on, like the different psychological aspects of horror anime and things like that, if you watch it through again. So I typically like to analyze the story and the plot first, and then I go into the atmosphere. So things like, does it create dread? Does it create suspense? So is it like more Stephen Kingy? Is it more gory? Those types of things. The visuals and art, because those are things that really kind of pop out at people. They catch people's eye. The characters, are they scary? Are they more chronological? Do they build? Do they develop themselves? Are they something that I can connect to personally and something that I can put myself in the shoes of and kind of live vicariously through? Pacing and fear factor, definitely something that a horror anime needs. If you don't have a lot of pacing, if you don't have a lot of thrills that are going to keep me interested, I'm not going to buy into your anime, and I'm not going to buy into pretty much anything horror related, because I'm going to get bored really fast.
Yeah.
Psychological impact. So this is the mentality of the horror just thing in general. Do you make me fear things after I watch you? So do you create that sense of dread, and do I, fear going to bed at night after I watch this thing? Soundtrack and sound design. So there are a lot of things that cause a buildup of fear, and soundtrack is one of those. So if you have a really good soundtrack that builds suspense and builds kind of that tension, you're going to have a lot more of a scary, kind of leaves a resounding impact feel than if you have, a happy-go-lucky music track that goes along with like blood and guts and gore. Originality. So if something is really kind of an original idea that is really out there, it's going to stick with me a lot more than, the typical blood, guts, and gore do. So we have talked a little bit about The Promised Neverland, and this one is definitely an anime that sticks with people because it's kind of shocking. So we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a little bit. But yeah, definitely going to get you on the originality portion of that whole idea. And then rewatch and reread value. So anime and manga kind of go hand in hand, so I put reread in there as well. But is this worth watching again or experiencing again? Do I think that I missed something? Where is the story value in this? And do I think that people will like it aside from me? So is there something in there that I think people will attach to and people will want to, consume? So I rank this on each one of these things on a 10-point scale, 100 points total, and this is kind of how I evaluate my anime. As far as my favorite horror anime go, there's a lot to unpack there. I have watched so many horror anime, and I'm a horror movie fanatic, so that's where I kind of got my start in all of this. Anime kind of came later when I got into high school and college, but as far as my favorites go, I'd probably have to go, I count Demon Slayer as a horror anime because we start out with, a kid that is happy-go-lucky, he's got a nice family. All of a sudden, this demon comes along and murks his entire family, with the exception of his sister that gets turned into an actual demon herself, and he has to figure out, how to save her, because this Demon Slayer core basically says you either figure out how to save her or she dies. We're going to kill her. And yeah, it's a great story, even though it sounds really bad right now. And then he goes on this whole venture and journey of slaying demons and basically attacking this main demon guy named Muzan, who looks really similar and akin to Michael Jackson. And there's a whole joke about how he is Michael Jackson. Yeah, it's a side tangent, but yeah, I liken it to horror just because there's a lot of suspense. There's a lot of fear and phobia aspects that get incorporated into it, and it's really, really good. I highly recommend if you haven't seen it. So that's probably one of my top horror anime, even though a lot of people don't really consider it horror just because there's a lot of comedic relief with like Zenitsu and Inosuke and all of the other comedic characters in it. If I'm going traditional anime, I'd have to say Berserk, because Berserk is an anime that's been around for a while. It's got a really tragic backstory with its main character, whose name is Guts. People remember it just because Guts has this like huge sword, and people are super enthralled by that. They're like, oh my god, how does he carry this thing around? And then he gets betrayed by his best friend, and all sorts of other things happen. And it's super long, so people are like, oh my gosh, this thing goes on forever. And it's a story that kind of carries through, and it really kind of has a lot of plot twists and things like that that people don't see coming. So people are all like, oh yeah, Berserk is great, you know? So Berserk has to be one of my top as far as traditional anime go. Promise Neverland, just because nobody sees that coming. It's a plot twist that everybody's like, wow, yeah. So we have this group of orphaned children, allegedly. We find out that they're not really actually orphaned in the future episodes, but they start out in an orphanage. Everybody's happy. They're well taken care of. You know, they have this mother figure that's in the orphanage, and the mother is taking care of them and things. They're educated, and as they become smarter and smarter, the smart kids are taken out of the orphanage and they get adopted. So they're basically encouraged to become more and more intelligent, because if you're intelligent, you get adopted more quickly. Well, one of the kids, her name is Connie, gets adopted, and she ends up forgetting her little teddy bear at the orphanage. So the three main characters try to get her teddy bear before her adopted family, quote unquote, takes her away from the orphanage. So they run this little teddy bear out to her, and they try to give it to her before she leaves. And when they get there and see her being taken by her adopted, quote unquote, parents, they find her being eaten alive by a demon.
Which is just like, you couldn't have waited till you got home, just right there in the street.
Yep. It's literally right out. Like, there's a gate that they have to get out of, and then there's this little like cavern that a car is parked in, and it's right there. And they find out that her adopted, like, I think it's the father, is a demon, and he's literally consuming her. So, yeah. So they find out that all of the orphanages are quite literally just feeding pens, basically, where they're raising these kids for the demons to eat. And yeah, the kids become cognizant of this, and they become really, really terrified. But they're like, oh, if we realize this, and if they realize that we've realized this, they're just going to kill us all. So that's probably a bad thing.
That could be.
Yeah. So basically what happens here is they decide that they're going to escape, and they have to figure out how. So the three main characters end up basically trying to figure out a whole plan to escape, and they bring some of the intelligent kids with them. They don't bring all the kids with them, though, so that's unfortunate. But they uncover this whole plot and this whole plan, and basically there's a human guy who has made a deal with the demons to basically leave the rest of the humans alone so long as they breed children to put into the orphanages. And yeah, they allow those children to be fed to the demons. Yeah, so it's a bit rough, and there's a lot of psychological trauma there. The first time you watch it through, it's a bit rough, especially in the first season. If you read the manga, it's a lot different than the actual show, especially when you get into like season 2 of the show. I don't like season 2 of the show. Season 1, though, is pretty true to the manga, and it's rough. So yeah, that one, as far as psychological twists go, gonna get ya. If you also, sorry for the spoiler on that one, if you were hoping to go into that just completely blind and to be shocked.
I'll probably put up a spoiler warning up.
Fair. My last horror anime that I would probably put up in my top 4 would probably be Castlevania, just because it's got one of those traditional horror storylines. We have kind of a Dracula retelling here, and it's got a really interesting subplot that kind of veers away from the traditional Dracula story. We get a narrative that while it has some of the things that are true to Dracula, and while it has some of the things like the vampirism and things like that that are true to the Dracula original story, it veers off. So we have Dracula, who has this human wife, and he loves her very deeply and dearly. She ends up getting accused of witchcraft. The humans end up trying her for witchcraft, and they kill her. And he basically goes on this vengeful kind of persecution against all of humanity. And yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't go well. So he also has this son named Alucard, which is Dracula spelled backwards, conveniently enough. And Alucard ends up meeting our other two main characters. They go on this kind of quest to defeat the Dracula main character, which is basically what most of season 1 and 2 kind
Well,
of follow.
something that I I don't like about Castlevania is that the first season is only 4 episodes.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is
it's really
upsetting.
short.
And then like so season 1 and 2 is them trying to find and kill Dracula, and then the rest of the series is I haven't rewatched it in a while, so I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know another like vampire lord kind of
Yep,
takes over main villain, and then some point at the end they fight death,
yep,
which is
yep. Yeah, it gets a little weird toward the end, but in the beginning stages, it's really good. When you get toward the end, like the creators, I think, kind of lose some of the idea and some of the vision of where this is going. So, if you watch Castlevania, I advise stopping after season 2.
yeah. Season 2 is which Castlevania is the only like horror anime I've really seen. I've started Tokyo Ghoul, but haven't gotten too far into it.
Yeah,
But
and Tokyo Ghoul is a good gore anime in my opinion. That one and Jujutsu Kaisen, super good as far as those go. But yeah, Castlevania, as far as rewatch value goes, I would put it at like season 2. I would probably stop.
yeah, which kind of blends the two topics we have today because Castlevania is based off of a video game, which the series started in I think 1998, and
Yep.
it's it's I haven't played many of the games, but it's not my favorite game style, and the story is a lot more confusing, so it's a lot better to understand watching the anime than playing the games.
Oh yeah, and that's the weird thing about this. So Castlevania is based off of a video game created by Japanese creators, and it's a really weird game. Like,
Yeah,
it's really difficult to understand the story, and the anime, I think, brings that story to life a lot better than the game itself. Now, other horror video games, when we actually get into those, do a really good job, I think, of bringing the horror stories to life. Castlevania's is a bit iffy.
yeah, it's your and then like Castlevania kind of just it's one of those old like pixel slideshow games, which is after I because I just bought them for my PlayStation 5 and they are very difficult to play.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And don't get me wrong, some modern horror games are difficult to play. Like, don't get me wrong, Phasmophobia is one of my favorite games as far as horror video games go, but it drives me nuts when I get kicked. Like, every single one has their glitches and they have their bugs, but there's some, enjoyment value. But Castlevania's is just it's strange to me.
Yeah, the some of my favorite horror games that I like to play are like uh probably the biggest one on my list is Alan Wake because I love the different tone it takes in horror because it's not like the first one the second one definitely outshines the first one by a lot, but the first one is like a writer who's in a writer's block. His wife takes him to this small island town just to like re-evoke his like imagination for writing, but it turns out she takes him to the most cursed island she can find, and She gets kidnapped and taken and trapped in this place called the Dark Place, where it's basically our world, but completely remade in this thing. I think I can't remember the name in the original game, but I know in the second one his name is Warlandor, and he traps these people, and to keep them from escaping, he puts them through these loops and just or well, it's not really loops. After in the second, this game is very confusing and hard to tell. But like, they're in spirals, so like they're going into a circle, but the more they go, the closer they get to escaping. So Warlandor tries to make the spirals as big as he can, and Alan Wake gets trapped at the end of the first one, and then in the second one we take the first bit of the game. We switch perspectives into an FBI agent named Saga Anderson, and she's there to I think investigate culty murders, which we find out later that the cult is trying to keep the dark place at bay, but because the people who have been murdered are overtaken by the darkness and are bad guys. And so Alan Wake escapes, but it's not Alan Wake, it's his evil twin, and so Alan Wake is still trapped, and at the end they both escape, and they finally defeat the dark place, question mark, because it leaves off on a big cliffhanger, and there's going to be a third one, and I'm really excited.
That's fair. That's fair. It always seems like they end on weird cliffhangers too, because it's like they need to make another one.
Especially with, like, in horror films, they make sequels that don't need a sequel.
Yes, yes. And it's the same thing with horror movies. Like, if you've ever seen, like, the Friday the 13th series.
Yeah, they're gonna try to cram as many movies as they can, and at one point Jason goes to space for
Yes,
who knows what reason.
yes. And don't get me wrong, I love Jason Voorhees, but so many.
It gets I'd say if you're new to horror and you want to watch the Friday the 13th series, stop at 4.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
4 in my opinion is the best Friday the 13th, and it is like it's called the final chapter because it was supposed
to be the end.
But
All of it.
nope.
Nope.
In 5 there's a copycat, and then in 6 he's back from the dead.
Yep. And he just becomes immortal, and at that point it's like you can't stop him, so why even try?
There's at one point where he goes to hell. He comes back because Freddy Krueger decides because then we go into Freddy versus
Jason. Yep.
Which Freddy wants to be remembered, and he can't do that without causing some mayhem. So he brings Jason back to life to try to make people think that it's Freddy, and then Jason goes off the rails. So Freddy decides to fight him and gets absolutely obliterated by Jason.
Yep. Which is insane, but anyway, like, weird dream state demon is gonna get obliterated by some weird mass serial killer with a chainsaw.
Yeah, it's a wild ride, some of those slashers.
Yeah.
And then, like, some more video games that I enjoy. I always enjoy the Your Choice Have Consequences games.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, like, Until Dawn.
Until Dawn is so good.
It's so good. And they just came out with a movie for it, which I'm hearing it has some bad reviews, which is kind of upsetting.
True.
But another one that's really good is The Quarry.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love The Quarry so much. Because it's like it's your summer camp, so, like, and they have a bunch of different details to it. I mean, there's werewolves, there's psycho hillbillies, and then there's ghosts.
Yeah, and Until Dawn was actually one of my first horror video games. So weirdly enough, I was on a debate trip when I was in college. We brought a PlayStation with us and we played Until Dawn, and none of us knew what it was. None of us knew what was going to happen. So we thought it was just this weird game where we were making choices, and we would flip a coin and we would make a choice that way. Had no idea that the butterfly effect was going to come into affect it or come into play in this. and that there were like weird zombie things that were gonna come out of the woodwork. And so we were
Yeah.
just making these choices, like going all about our business, and all of a sudden these weird, creepy zombie things came out of the woodwork. And it was so funny because all of us were like, whoa, what just happened?
And then you have like the Switch where you have this kind of like jigsaw type character. I don't want to spoil the game because it has such a good twist. It has multiple twists
Oh,
in
yeah.
it, and they're all just so good.
Oh, yeah. And it's all based on like the choices that you make in the game. So there's prompts that pop up. You have to make choices based on the prompts. Like you have to press buttons at a certain time. And if you don't press the right buttons or if you mess up the thing, like
You have to
it's,
keep your controller still, which
yep.
is that
So hard when you're
it's
terrified.
so bad. And I think I accidentally got my favorite character killed because like my hands are shaking and you have to keep the controller still, and I was just like, ah, crap.
Yep. It's like just throw it down really fast on a stable surface and hope for the best.
And then there's another like a anthology game series, which is some of my favorite games, which is the Dark Pictures anthology.
Oh, yeah.
Cause like, and they all are completely different. The only similarity they have is this weird guy who you like visit about halfway through the game and at the beginning of the game, and he's kind of like the narrator, which he's like, if you know anything about Creepshow, he's basically like the creep in of that
Okay.
series, and the first game they're on a submarine, like a World Wars One submarine, that has, I don't want to spoil the big twist, but they start losing their minds, and just there's a lot of jump scares in that one. I was playing with my sister and she's like, nothing scary's happened in a little bit. Right after a pot like dropped in the kitchen and then my controller went flying across the room.
Yep.
And then the second one is more of like a Silent Hill type
Okay.
game. And then the third one is, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called The Descent. It's
Oh,
where,
yeah.
yeah, it's basically like that. So where a group of people or archaeologists go into a cave
Yep.
and there's monsters. And then the last one, which is my absolute favorite, is these kind of like history buffs who are like making a show get invited to this island where man has completely recreated H.H. Holmes's like murder house, and like he brings a new group of people there and like leaves one survivor to invite another group just to kill them. And it was most interesting to me because H.H. Holmes is like the most interesting serial killer in my opinion, and he was like one of the America's first serial killers.
Oh, yeah.
And then the season 2 of the game series is coming out soon, and I'm really excited.
That's 100% fair. So, steering back to one of the most popular horror games at this point, and you've probably seen some like Facebook reels or TikTok videos about it. So, Phasmophobia is probably one of the most popular horror games that has gone around at this point. Its entire premise is about ghost hunting. You've got like 20 different kinds of ghosts that you can possibly hunt, that you track down evidence based on a couple of different things that you've got in a truck, and you go to different locations and you're searching for this evidence. You find a ghost in a room and you're trying to discern which ghost you have in the room based on the evidence. And you've got different modes that you can play on. So you've got like your beginning stages, your insanity modes where they take away different portions of evidence. And you've got like your challenge modes where they take away different pieces of evidence and things like that, and different tools that you can use to get that evidence. And it's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It is an awesome game, in my opinion, and I'm addicted to it, and I've almost prestiged at this point. And I am so excited about the creation and the development that has gone into it, because I am hoping they come out with another one, because it is honestly one of the funnest games that I've played as far as horror games go.
Yeah, and it has, I I love Phasmophobia because of like I love that you can play with other people, and I love some of the things when you're playing with random people, the funny things
Oh
that
yeah.
can aspire from these
The
people.
co-ops are so fun, and they also incorporate cursed objects into it, so that's hilarious. So you can play with a Ouija board, you can play with tarot cards, you can play with, they have like a monkey paw, they have a cursed mirror, they have a music box, like all sorts of things, a voodoo doll. They have all sorts of things that you can use to mess around with in the game and to mess with people, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
So I actually just played a co-op last night with a bunch of strangers that I had no idea who any of them were, and we had the music box. And I started playing the music box. I threw it down in the hallway, sprinted out of the house, and just left it playing in the middle of the house. And we were in Tanglewood of all the places. So like it's the easiest house to play in the game. Nobody heard the music box going off. So all three of the other people were in the house. The music box is just playing, and it was a Hantu. We hadn't turned the breaker on. It was a Hantu ghost, which, if you don't know what a Hantu is, if you don't have the breaker on, they are fast in cold temperatures. They get faster when it's colder, and if you don't have the breaker on, it's freezing in the house. So not only that, it was snowing outside, so we had like -5 degree temperatures, and that's Celsius. So it's really cold on the inside. So I was watching, we had a video camera placed in the house, and I watched, and this ghost literally just zoomed. We were playing in nightmare mode, so the ghost just literally like zoomed 1-to-1 and just killed
So
all
funny.
three of them super fast. And they were like, "What just happened?"
Which like I I like so when you play in VR, because it has a VR co-op mode, and which is really cool that some people can play in VR while others can't. And in when you're in VR, after you die, you could just kind of like move things
Oh
around.
yeah.
But when you're in normal, you can't see when the character is holding something. You only see it when it's picked up or when it's dropped.
Yep.
But when if you're playing in VR, everybody can see the object like moving around. So whenever I'm in VR and after I die, because I usually die first in that game, I just like grab a cup or a knife and just chase people around, and it's so funny.
Have you seen the motion sensor one? So
No.
if you're a dead person, you can make the motion sensor go off, so you can annoy people and you can make them think that it's like the
Oh,
twins,
that's
and you
really
control
funny.
people. So if you've got motion sensors in more than one room, so there's these ghosts called the twins, and they typically set off motion sensors and other objects in more than one location at the same time. So if you've got evidence that is making you lean toward the twins, you can, if you die in the game, troll your other teammates, and you can make them think that it's the twins by setting off the motion sensors in another location. Because you're a ghost now, you're dead. And so you can go and like run around the motion sensor and make it go off.
That's really funny.
It's hilarious. And I was like, I'm doing that next time. I don't even care. I will intentionally die so I can go and set off this motion sensor.
Uh, and then like another co-op horror game, which is probably one of the most popular horror games, is Dead by Daylight.
Oh, yeah.
I I have a serious love-hate relationship with Dead by
I
Daylight.
think everybody does, honestly. Like, there's just so much chaotic energy, I think, that
Yeah.
went into creating that game.
And then you have like I main Survivors, and the game is very killer sided.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so like you're going up against all these like way too overpowered killers, which the I can't remember his name, but the main character of Tokyo Ghoul was just put into the game
Yeah.
as a killer, and he's way too overpowered. They already had to nerf him, and it's so annoying sometimes. And then like after you play a few matches and you're almost done, and then you just get a friendly killer. It's such a nice like being able to breathe because you just have this friendly killer who's telling you to work on the generators instead of trying to murder you.
Yeah.
And some of the killers I love is like some that aren't friendly but they have personality. because like I was going up against a Michael Myers, which is horrifying because
Yeah.
Michael, you can just be like, this happened to me. I was working on a gen, turns a corner real quick because I think he has a perk where he can silence his heartbeat, which is like you can hear when a killer is near, and just yoinks me off the generator, and I was like, crap.
Yep.
And then I'm working on the same generator later after I get unhooked, and I like look in the corner, and he's like slowly walking towards me, and so I turn around, and there's like two emotes in the game where you can like point away or tell somebody to come to you. So I just like pointed at him to go away, and he went away. And it was really funny.
I mean, that's nice at least. But yeah, no. And Michael Myers is honestly one of the creepiest ones in that game, I think, because, I mean, just in general, like, if you've ever watched Halloween, he's just one of those intense figures. Like, he never talks. He never has emotions on his face because he's always wearing a mask, you know?
Yeah.
And so he's one of those figures that just stands there and looms, and that's all he does. And he does that in the game, too.
Yeah.
So he's just a silent enigma that if you're not paying attention, he's gonna catch you.
Yeah.
He's gonna sneak up on you, and you just have no idea when it's gonna be.
I've seen so many Dead by Daylight clips on like TikTok or on YouTube of like going up against Michael Myers, and like there's this one guy whose clip is just like, oh, he's not gonna be there, right? And then he's like working on a gen, and his camera just turns a little bit, and Michael's standing in the corner of the room, and so he just screams and just runs away, which is it's so funny.
Yes. Also, so have you seen the new I don't know what game it is, but there's a bunch of clips going around, and it's a new suspense video game with dinosaurs in it. And it looks similar to Dead by Daylight, but it's like there are dinosaurs outside, and you're playing as a character that's like running around houses and things doing repairs or something like that, and the dinosaurs are stalking and hunting you. And it's like the dinosaurs in Jurassic World, and so you've got the ones with like the long fingers and stuff, even though that one's an actual herbivore. Like, but you've got like the Indominus Rex, you've got Tyrannosaurus Rex, and all sorts of other things. And I was like, that is cool.
That would
and
be
I
really
want to
cool.
play this game.
Another one of my favorite like indie horror games is called The Mortuary's Assistant,
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
which is like it's completely like randomly generated with like the scares. So like no, and there's like multiple endings, so no game through is gonna be the exact
Yeah.
same. And it's they're working on a movie for it apparently, which
See,
which I think could be good, but
and it reminds me of there's actually an indie movie. It's called The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
yes.
And it reminds me of that. So I'm
Mm.
like, are you just going to create another Autopsy of Jane Doe? And
Yeah.
like, I feel like I would like that because The Autopsy of Jane Doe is one of my favorite indie horror movies.
Yes, that one
but
is so good.
I know. And honestly, I was like, I don't know how I feel about you mixing the whole like demonic witch thing with the autopsy thing, but by the end of it I was like, okay, yeah, I buy
Yeah.
into it.
I loved the suspense of that movie.
Yes, it was so good. I hated that they killed the cat. That was my
Yeah.
least favorite part.
But if you're one of the worst things about horror is if they have a pet.
I know. I hate
It's-
that they always kill the animals. Like, that's the part about horror movies that I hate the most. I'm like, don't kill the horse, don't kill the dog. They didn't do anything wrong. Leave the animal alone.
which one of the my favorite most recent horror movies, A Quiet Place Day 1.
Oh yeah, with the
with
cat.
the cat, and the cat lives.
I know.
The cat
I'm like,
survived.
the cat survives.
And
Favorite horror movie just off of that.
yeah, and I loved Day 1, I think, more than the other two,
Yeah.
because I don't know, it had a different tone to the movie, and
Oh yeah.
I liked seeing them more in like an open world and like more the start, so they're not sure how exactly the monsters work, and
Right.
they catch on real quick, and like your main character is deaf, and it's such a good movie.
Oh yeah. And I really like the fact that they give you the backstory there. Like, A Quiet Place in general, I really liked. I liked the suspense of it, but I really like that they give you more of the detail and depth into the story because I really felt like that was lacking in the first two.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. So, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course.
I've been Logan Loya, and you've been listening to Terror Talk.